So thank you for doing this. I really
My
enjoyed the
pleasure.
series. It was quite everything. I didn't know what to expect, and it delivered on that aspect, which was always fun.
Glad to hear that.
My first question for you is, what made you want to get into acting? Was there any kind of inspiration, or was it happened by accident?
So it was a good question. Why would anybody get into the carny life, right? You're either born into it, you're drawn to it like a moth to a flame, or you're forced into it like some sort of compulsion. My entry was pretty pedantic. I was just a class clown when I was growing up, and that was my way of fitting in. We moved around a lot. When I was in college and undergraduate, I discovered that you could make fairly decent grades if you took the right classes by being a class clown. So performance-oriented classes came naturally to me. The speech communications department offered a concentration in oral interpretation of prose and poetry, which means just interpreting monologues, basically. So intuitively, I came to it. It's a little bit of an avant-garde theater expression. It's an academic exercise.
Yeah.
But it was a way for me to fit in, find my tribe. I didn't really think of it as a likely career path for me. There was nobody in my family that I was aware of that had a career in the arts that was at the least profitable, much less sustainable. Or I should say sustainable, much less profitable. But the teachers that I had, some really wonderful and skilled teachers, very encouraging, but realistic, suggested that since teaching was also on my radar, because so many of my mentors and the people that I idolized were my teachers, I thought that I would go ahead and get my master's in acting, and that I could teach. And the first day that I was in acting school, I realized that I didn't want to teach as much as I wanted to try a career in acting. I just needed to be around certain kinds of personalities who were going to take it as seriously as I did.
So did the academic approach help you? Because it seems like, when you deliver, and this character is not a simple one to break down. And I think understanding, like you're saying, understanding what he's saying and getting into more of the themes and deeper into, what's layered into the dialogue. Do you think that really helped you, the academic approach?
I can't help but believe there's just no chance that I would be where I am in my career without the training that I had. The teachers that you're exposed to, the other students and their ambitions, that you're exposed to, the material, the depth of the material that you're forced to reckon with on a daily basis, encourages a kind of attention that is rigorous, and it is in a way academic. And the biggest journey I feel like I've taken in my own study of acting is moving from the academic to the organic. So I can look back at earlier performances and feel like, well, I can see me thinking through that one. I can see how I was trying to consider every potential. I can see where I was trying to place my voice. But I don't think I had found yet the full potential of creating something that felt organic, but was apart from yourself with complex material until much later in my life. And I am indebted to the experiences that I had early on. When you're in acting school, you're insulated from the pressures of delivering financially as a performing artist, which is an awful thing to deliver financially as a performing artist. There's just so few avenues to success. So when you're in graduate school, you do subject yourself to the occasional teacher who tells you you're a piece of shit and terrible and et cetera, and you'll never solve that problem in your career path. But that's small potatoes compared to making your rent. And so I don't think that there would be nearly the likelihood that I would be in the position that I am now without the full bore 3-year acting school intensive.
It sounds like, some of what you're saying reminds me of like with travel. There's no shortcut to experiencing the world, and going through the academic route, you were forced to go through different experiences and take on different routes that you wouldn't have. And if positive or negative, but those are also, as an actor, I'm sure those factor in as well later down the line. If someone lives in a bubble, how can you possibly convey true human emotion and feelings?
I think it's a great analogy. In fact, encountering people, and this is one advantage to training in New York. The kinds of people you encounter first in school are from all over the country or all over the world. And then the kind of people you encounter on the subway going to school are from all over the world, and you are forced to reckon with that humanity on a daily basis. It is the great thing about New York, and I think the greatest expression of America's potential as a melting pot. And as an actor, when you have the opportunity to, as you say, encounter the disparate experiences of life, it not only exposes you to different lives, but it forces a kind of empathy that I think is not just a tool that you can utilize in your work, but it is a life lesson and a way to, I think, be in the adult world in as full and present a way as possible, because you can have empathy for a lot of different kinds of people.
Sure. And when you mentioned this country, the melting pot only works if you actually allow it to melt. If you let those things, flavors and things, and it's unfortunately we're having this big divide, and it's like oil and water lately.
Oh yeah, people want to boil off parts of it, skim off the top, put them into another place, and that kind of screws up the whole stew.
Sure. They want to say this is the right one. I'm like, no, there's no right one. We all come together.
I agree. And to that way of thinking, the creative collaborative endeavor, which Hello Tomorrow I think is a wonderful representation of, is truly disparate voices trying to find a singular, novel, newly imagined story. And we do have dictator writer directors who do create singular original pieces of work, but they are rare. And your best opportunity, from my perspective, to be a part of something that's original and entertaining and maybe outside your own way of thinking is by, in good faith, collaborating with people who think very differently than you. And sometimes that creates conflict, but like I say, if you live in New York and you're used to getting told to fuck off once a day just for walking at the pace you're walking on, then it allows for a kind of generosity of spirit that creates a better environment for creative collaboration.
Sure. And if we agree to try to agree instead of agree to disagree, which people often say, I'm like, no, that's the wrong way. And then you can actually work yourself towards something better for both of you or for everybody. So let's get into Hello Tomorrow a little bit. What was the original pitch that you were given for the series?
The cover letter, wish I could read it. It was so eloquent. I have it somewhere, I'm sure. But it described the exploration of Death of a Salesman through the vocabulary of the Jetsons in a way, and giving a entertaining arena to explore something that I think is quite relevant today, which is the inheritance of promise and what that does to the psyche when the avenues for actual success are more narrow than they've been taught to you. So we inherit this idea that we're born in America, land of the free, home of the brave. Opportunity is everywhere. We have the bounty of the universe sort of at our fingertips. And so your success will only be a feature of your character and will. And I haven't experienced that in this country. I think there is a formidable power structure in play that does a better job of teaching the idea of hope than actually granting people opportunity to ascend. And from an interpersonal point of view, I saw that in my father, and what it then, the expression in his life of that philosophy or truth, if I say it, is that he was never good enough. And the feature of never being good enough makes you want to gamble a lot, because the idea that you can hit the jackpot at any one time and solve your problems, nature of the lottery, nature of gambling, and also the nature of entrepreneurship in a way. The gamble, if it's a way of life, is covering the existential crisis of living. So there is a part of that kind of person, to me, that is woven into the fabric of Americans. And so it was a very personal story on the one hand, but I thought quite a relevant one on the other, with respect to the number of people in our middle class who have almost no opportunity, even with the most determined work ethic and creative ambition, to truly ascend their class. We really do live in, from my perspective, a classist country. And we, unlike England or India, sort of other democracies that have clear systems of class or caste, America, we sort of not just dismiss, but promote the idea that there is no such thing, when in fact, I think it's quite true. And so it leads to quite interesting psychological studies, like Willie Loman and hopefully Jack Billings and my father, Tommy Crudup, being some of them. And so that's what really drew me to it.
And what about Jack in particular? Like, is there something, any kind of qualities of that Jack that you wanted to explore?
His refusal to accept reality as it is, because the nature of simply working hard was so distressing to him, is kind of fascinating to me. I think I've developed a different philosophy myself, that you can celebrate the highs and lows of a career going up and down, but a precious experience is always a precious experience. Doesn't matter what the whether or not people see it, whether or not people enjoy it, whether or not there are accolades about it, whether or not it makes money for the company. The experience that you had, insofar as you can pay your rent, you're not screwing people over, is a beautiful thing to celebrate. And I feel like there are so many people who have this. The reason I say inherited is because part of it, I think, is pre-verbal. I think you just walk into the American world understanding these ideas about the American mythology, and that inheritance at a certain point, I think, can be really oppressive. And so what do you do to fight against that oppression? Well, Jack, on the one hand, decides to ignore it. He decides to fight it off, and he fights it off with optimism. He's a wonderful salesman, and he is selling the faith of American capitalism as a religion. He is a preacher for this idea that there is always tomorrow. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward, and you will get to the promised land. Meanwhile, your whole life goes by. I mean, this is what happened with his kid. He goes out on the road. Kid's 2 years old. He's like, I'm going to be back in a week. 2 weeks goes by and he calls and says, hey, I've got some new leads in Boise. I just got to chase them a little bit. And then 18 years goes by and he doesn't get to be a father. His son doesn't get to have a father. His wife has been left in the lurch with no, trace of Jack. His mom is disappointed in him. And he's got no career except for selling hopes and dreams of escapism to people who are in need.
I love it. That's a great interpreting, or a great, read on it. I had written in my review how he's selling, it's like religion. And instead of selling the big man in the sky, he's selling the moon in the sky. And that's your escape.
That's it.
And whatever you believe in religion and faith, doesn't matter, but it's very similar to that. It's
I am of the same mind that a good story is a good story, and we all need stories. And listen, we do that in the theater easily. We sell a seat for $40. Give us a good story. If it sucks, people are going to be pissed that they paid $40. If it's extravagant, they're going to be overwhelmed with joy that it only cost $40. I could say the same that happens every Sunday at church. You're going to put $20 in the tithe, or $10 or $5 or $100 if you're a high roller or whatever, but you're going to get a good story. Whether that story was written by whoever, you think wrote that story, there's a similar kind of affirmation about sociological storytelling that, is there is no recorded human history that is without some kind of transaction between the storyteller and those in need of a good story. So Jack is basically leveraging, saying, as long as I don't charge too much for these timeshares, so that I then feel guilty about having stripped this older person of their social security net, then it should be good enough for most, because a little bit of hope is a precious thing. And that is what we're selling on Sundays.
Does he believe anything he says, or or is he just telling people what they need to hear?
This is what my dad was great at. My dad was great at having just enough potential that he could sell you the whole thing. He'll sell you a car. The engine is rotted to shit, but he could talk about the exterior and the interior finishes in a way that you might go, well, I bet I could get it running, and God, if I could get it running, this would be the greatest car of all time. So there is, some features that the writer shrewdly planted throughout that indicate that he has enough belief that this can happen if it hasn't happened already. And with enough interest, everyone's dreams will be fulfilled. That's another feature of this kind of personality, is he does not allow for cynical thought, personally and from those around him. That the reality is the thing he's running from. The reality tells you should be. Cynicism is realism. You can't sell people air. That's not nice. Those are the realities of it. And so Jack simply can't let that kind of thinking into his head.
And everyone in this series seems to be looking for something. What is Jack looking for? What drives him?
I think his father and his mother set the stage for a gross misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding is that Jack isn't good enough, just simply by being Jack. Jack was born in debt, and his life is an expression of him getting out of debt. Why he was born in debt, that was his parents that were born in debt. He misunderstood that, And my dad was told by his granddad that he was a piece of crap. My granddad's idea behind it was, I want to toughen you up because life is tough. And I want you to be successful. So I don't want you to sweat the small stuff. So I'm going to be hard on you. But what my dad inherited was, I'm a piece of shit. And so it's, that misunderstanding to me is at the heart of Jack's complexity. And I can't help but project that into the broader picture of America. As a paternal figure, as a maternal figure, whatever the homeland or the motherland or whatever is telling you about what you were born into, it's hard to make sense of it if you feel like you were born in debt.
Let me break away for 1 second and just say you should really do an audio commentary on the whole series, because these answers are, I mean, it's completely not changing, but enhancing my appreciation for this series. And I really want to go back now and watch it again. It's
I appreciate that. And I can tell you, Amit, Lucas, and I, every day from the second we met, this is all we talked about. This is all we thought about. This is the story that we wanted to tell. And you have very game and empathetic creators who put a lot of thought into it, whether it works or doesn't work for people. That you can't get too involved with that if you're in the creative arts. I think you'll be on the fast road to mediocrity if you try to please everyone.
I completely agree. I do have to wrap up quickly, so I do have, it's kind of a big question, but Jack's relationship with Joey really evolves. I don't want to get into spoilers, but can you just talk about that relationship a little bit and where it starts and where it ends? Because you see in the episode 2, he's the boss, and he's creating this father-like, showing him the ropes, taking him to a ball game, and then it goes from there, up and down and all over the place. Can you just touch upon that a little bit?
I suspect that Jack carries with him an enormous guilt, an enormous burden that he subverts at most times. And I think it's both for himself and for the people that he left behind. And I don't think his intention in trying to become successful in the way that his parents imagined he should had anything to do with his ability to, or his desire to be a parent. I think he was terrified that he would only be himself. And since he was told that just being himself is not good enough, that'd be a terrible thing for a child to have, somebody who was a terrible parent. So there's a misunderstanding there, I think, but at the heart of it, he deeply wants to parent his son in some way. And so he gets actually the best of both worlds, which is he doesn't have to return and take responsibility for himself, and he gets to pantomime being a father. Joey, on the other hand, has been desperate for a paternal figure. And the notion that there would be someone as easily and unabashedly loving, caring, and thoughtful that would walk into his life seemed impossible only days before. And so they're both in need of this connection. Jack understanding it, I think, much more richly than Joey at the time. And so then you have this evolution where it's almost like they do a reverse of how sometimes kids develop into adults, which is they go through their teenage years, they fight against you, and then when they have kids themselves, they come back and they respect the work that you did. So this one is they respect the work first, they're grateful for your presence, and then towards the middle to latter part of the season, you start to see the full feature of the rebellion.
Wonderful. Let me finish. Very quick question. 3 words to describe Jack.
Consummate American optimist.
Love it. Fantastic. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work on the series. Like I said, I'm going to go back and rewatch it.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for the thoughtfulness.